Hi, my name is Bibek Adhikari. I am an English instructor. In today's class, we are going to solve the writing portion of Unit 4, that is, how to write a CV. So, let's begin. Let us start by learning what a CV is. Now, the first thing that we should know is CV, also known as resume, is a short document. So let's define it. So what is a CV or a resume? It is a short document describing your education, work history, etc. that you give an employer when you apply for a job. So what's a CV? In brief, a CV is a short document describing your education, work history, etc. that you give an employer when you apply for a job. So that is what a CV or resume is. CV also contains a list of achievements. So you may have many achievements. All you have to do while writing a CV is you need to list them all down. So CV contains a list of achievements. Another use of CV is it is used to describe a short description of things that have happened. So CV can also be defined as a short description of things that have happened. CV can also be defined as a short account of one's career. So a short account of one's career and qualifications. Career and qualifications prepared typically by an applicant for a position, right? So CV is prepared by an applicant. Good. Now let's go and understand how to write a good CV. Okay, let us now start by learning how to write a CV. And before that, we need to learn how long should a CV be. So the length is in question. How long should a CV be? That is the question. So a standard CV in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and anywhere around the world should be no longer than 2 sides of A4. So the length is 2 sides of an A4 paper. CV should not be longer than that. The thing that should be noted while drafting a CV is you must include the main facts. If your CV is just 1 page, that's fine. Sometimes even 1 page CV is fine. But the employers should know all the relevant information about you. Some medical or academic CV may be longer depending upon your experience, but that's fine. That's no hard and fast rule. So for now, what you can keep in mind is a CV could be a page long or it could be 2 sides of an A4 paper. Considering that you are some kind of a research person and have done a lot of researches and you need to include all those researches in your CV, then CV is obviously going to be long. But that is an exception. So that's all about the length of the CV. Now let's understand what to include in a CV. Now another question is what to include and what not to include. Now let's start by listing out all the different things that you should include in your CV. The first one is obviously contact details. Your employer is going to be very happy with you and he or she wants to contact you. Now, what does he need? He needs your contact details, right? So include your full name, include your home address, include your mobile number, include your email address. So you need to include your full name, your home address, your mobile number, and your email address. You do not need to include your date of birth. So what not to include? Not to include or optional. Date of birth is optional. You don't need to include your date of birth or a photograph. Even a photograph is optional unless and until you are applying for an acting or modeling job, right? Let us now assume that you're not applying for a modeling job or an acting career, so you don't need to mention explicitly your date of birth and you don't need to give any fancy photographs. So in the contact details section, all you need to write is your address, your full name, your mobile number, and your email address. That much would do. Now let's go to the second section, what to include. The second thing that we should include is what we call profile. Now what's a profile? The thing that you should include is called profile. Now profile is placed at the beginning of the CV. Your profile is a concise statement that highlights your key attributes or reasons for deciding to work in a particular field. So it is nothing but concise statement that highlights who you are. So it is just like your profile, like a Facebook profile. It highlights who you are. All you need to do is you need to pick out a few relevant achievements and skills. Not all, just a few. So pick out a few achievements and skills. pick out a few relevant achievements and skills, not all. Don't brag here right now, right? So these achievements and skills must clearly articulate your career aims. It must focus on sector you are applying to, as your cover letter will be job specific. So if you're applying for an engineering job, don't write that you have done some gymnastic trainings, because that's irrelevant, right? It has to be very job specific. It has to be job specific. Let's say you have done a master's in playing ping pong, who knows? And including that in some kind of marketing job would not be an added advantage, because that would do nothing, right? Another thing that you should keep in mind is you should always keep your profile short and snappy. Very short, very snappy. I believe 100 words is the perfect length. So that's all about profile. What's a profile? It's a concise statement that highlights who you are. You need to include a few relevant achievements and skills, and it should be very job specific. It should be short and snappy, 100 words. That's all. The third thing you should talk about is called education. You need to list and date all previous education, including professional qualifications, placing the most recent first. The first is the most recent. Don't write SLC in the first. Don't write +2 in the first. The most recent should be placed first, correct? Placing the most recent first. Supposing that you have done a master's degree in computer science, so you need to write something like this. In 2009, Masters in Computing, 3 Chandra College, I'm writing TC for that, first division. You can even make a table. Afterwards, 2006. BBA, specializing in IT, Nepal Commerce Campus, first division. So this is how you write. It should always be in the descending order. So the first should come first. The fourth thing you should talk about is what we call work experience. You need to list your experience in reverse chronological order, making sure that anything you mention is relevant to the job you're applying for. So it should be relevant. If you have plenty job experience, this section should come before education. Let's say you are very much experienced and you have 15 years of working experience. And this should come before your educational qualification, because your educational qualification is going to be short, while this work experience list is going to be very, very long. But let's imagine that you do not have any work experience. You have just graduated and you are out of your college and you want to, get a head start in finding a job. What you need to do is you need to write that you have gotten some scholarships and you have some working experience as an intern and things like that. So list out all the work experience that you have. Relevant work experience. The fifth one is called skills and achievements, right? This is where you talk about the foreign languages you speak and the IT packages you competently use. Keep this in mind. The skills and achievements should be relevant, not over-exaggerated and to the point. So keep relevant information, not over-exaggerated and to the point. Right? Finally, we have something called interest. Right. Your interests provide a more rounded picture of you and give you something to talk about in the interview. Obviously, when you're shortlisted, you need to go and face the interview. So let's say you are, facing the employer, and employer is asking a lot of pesky questions. Now you need to respond. And these interests, saying things like, I like socializing, going to the cinema and reading is going to be really helpful, because it will give the employer a more rounded picture of you, right? You won't be something like a flat person, because believe me, we humans are not flat creatures. We are rounded. So examples could include writing your own blog if you want to be a journalist, being part of the drama group if you're looking to get into sales. Let's say you are applying to be a journalist, and let's say you already blog a bit, so that can be an added advantage. So the whole purpose of this is it will act as an added advantage. So that is the whole idea. Now the last one is what we call references. The last one is references. So this is again optional. You don't always need to provide the references. You can say something like, you can use a catchy phrase and say something like, references available upon request. So you can use this catchy phrase. references available upon request. Right? You don't need to provide the names of the references at this stage because it is considered optional now. Correct? Or you can use some catchy lines like references available upon request, as most employers would assume this to be the case. Correct? So these are the elements of CV. So there are 7 elements. There are 7 elements of CV, and the last one is references. Very good. Finally, I want to give you some tips. First one is use active verbs whenever possible. For example, you could include words like created, analyzed, devised to present yourself as a person who takes the initiative. Second advice is no spelling or grammar mistakes. No spellings or grammar mistakes in your CV. Use a spell checker and enlist a second pair of eyes to check over it. Third one. What's the third one? The third tip is avoid using generic phrases. Avoid using generic phrases like what? Like team player, I'm very hardworking. Hardworking is too generic. Saying multitasker, I'm quite a bit of a multitasker. That does not mean anything. So instead, provide real life examples that demonstrate all of these skills. The fourth tip that you should keep in mind is get to know your employer. Get to know your company beforehand. So take a look at the company's website, local press, and the job advert to make sure that your CV is targeted to the role and the employer. Some more tips. Decide on the order. So there are 7 elements. Decide on their order. The way I gave you the order is quite correct, but you can even make a little twist and turns. Make a little change. Another advice is professional sounding email. Emails like ilovechickenmama@gmail.com is sadly not acceptable. So professional sounding email, if your name is Rajani Acharya Rajani@yahoo.com or Rajani.acharya@yahoo.com, gmail.com is pretty good. But don't write something like I love watching Sheldon Cooper dance @gmail.com. So that's bad. Another tip, never lie, never exaggerate. Be who you are. So never lie and never exaggerate on your CV or job application. Not only will you demonstrate your dishonesty to a potential employer, but there can be a serious consequence too. For example, let's say you have got a GPA 3.2 and you said that you have got a GPA of 3.8 is classified as degree fraud and can be resolved in prison sentence, correct? So don't alter anything. If you've got a 2nd division, write that you've got a 2nd division. Don't write that you've got a 1st division because who knows? You may end up being in a jail. Number 8. If you're posting your CV online, if it's an online CV, don't write your home address. So don't write your home address because it could be targeted by fraudsters. The last piece of advice that I want to give you is include a cover letter. Right. You should always include a cover letter unless the employer states otherwise. So it will enable you to personalize your application to the job. You can draw attention to a particular part of your CV, disclose a disability, or clarify gaps in your work history. You can find out how to write a persuasive cover letter in the internet, of course. For now, these tips are almost done. I want to give you a homework. There's a sample CV given in the book, so I'm not going to copy everything from the book. This video was meant to give you some ideas on how to write a CV, not, just copy everything that was given in the book and make you memorize those sentences. No. So let's go to the homework section. So there's a homework. Your homework is... Right, this is your homework, pretty easy. Study the given CV from the book and draft a similar one. There's a CV in the name of Rajani Acharya, personal details are given. Profile is also mentioned, 100 words, keep that in mind. Education is given. Education is wrong, the SLC should never come in first. First, you should write BBS, this book is utterly absurd, I must say. Work experience should come in descending order. It is in descending order. Good. So interest, dancing, traveling, conducting researches is no good. Be very specific. Write the specific interest. Additional information. This is okay. References are given. Okay, they're fine. No problem with that. So use these ideas and draft a similar CV. With this, we have come to the end of today's class. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding this video series, feel free to write us at learning@deerwalk.edu.np. Thank you.